My name is Allison Parker, and I am 29 years old. 9 years ago, my family kicked me out and erased me from their lives. They cut me out of photos, packed away my belongings, and pretended I never existed. Today, I stand outside our family mansion, heart pounding, as I prepare to attend my sister Heather's engagement party uninvited. My hands are shaking, but I am not the broken girl they threw away. Before I share what happened when I walked through that door, let me know where you are watching from. Hit the like button if you have ever felt invisible to the people who should love you most. Subscribe to join me on this journey of healing and rediscovery. I grew up in Brookline, an affluent suburb of Boston, in a sprawling colonial home with perfectly manicured lawns and a 3-car garage. From the outside, the Parkers appeared to be the perfect American family. My father, Richard Parker, was a successful investment banker who worked for one of the largest firms in Boston. He wore custom-tailored suits, drove luxury cars, and expected nothing less than perfection from his children. Cold and calculating, every decision he made was based on status and appearances. My mother, Diane Parker, was a former beauty queen who had traded her pageant crown for a wealthy husband and social status. She spent her days planning charity galas, attending country club events, and critiquing everything from my posture to my clothing choices. Her validation came from other wealthy women admiring her home, her children, and her seemingly perfect life. Underneath that polished exterior was a woman who had never developed the capacity for genuine emotional connection. My sister Heather was 2 years younger than me and had always been the golden child. With her perfect grades, country club tennis championships, and ability to charm every adult she encountered, she embodied everything my parents valued. While I struggled with math, Heather won state competitions. When I fumbled through social interactions, Heather was elected class president. She learned early how to reflect back exactly what our parents wanted to see. My brother Tyler was 5 years younger than me, and the only one who seemed to genuinely care about my happiness. A sensitive boy with kind eyes, he would slip notes under my door when our parents had berated me at dinner. He would bring me cups of hot chocolate after I had been lectured about my inadequate math scores or inappropriate clothing choices. The tension in our home began to escalate when I entered high school and developed a passion for art. While my parents expected me to join debate club and prepare for a career in law or business, I spent hours in the art room developing my skills with different mediums. My art teacher, Mrs. Bennett, was the first person who ever told me I had genuine talent. She encouraged me to apply to art programs and helped me build a portfolio in secret. When college application season arrived, my father had already planned my future at Harvard or Yale, following in his footsteps toward a prestigious business career. The fight that erupted when I announced my intention to attend Rhode Island School of Design instead shattered any illusion of familial support. No daughter of mine is wasting her life on some useless art degree, my father had shouted, his face red with anger. If you want to throw away your potential on this nonsense, you will do it without my support. My mother, always his echo, added her own cutting remarks. Honestly, Allison, why must you always disappoint us? Your sister would never be this selfish. Despite their threats, I enrolled at RISD with student loans and a partial scholarship. The first semester was both exhilarating and terrifying. I was finally pursuing my passion, but doing it entirely on my own. The freedom was intoxicating, but the pressure was immense. When the depression that had lurked beneath the surface throughout my teens deepened into something unmanageable, I found myself unable to attend classes or complete assignments. By the end of my second semester, I was on academic probation, and by the middle of my sophomore year, I had to drop out. Returning home was the hardest thing I had ever done. I was 20 years old, clinically depressed, and felt like the failure my parents had always predicted I would be. I hoped for comfort, for a chance to heal and regroup. What I got instead was an ultimatum. "This is what happens when you defy us," my father said coldly when I told them about leaving school. "You have 2 options: transfer to Boston University for business, or get out of this house. Through tears, I tried to explain about the depression, about needing time to heal before making decisions about my future. My mother cut me off with a wave of her manicured hand. Stop with the excuses, Allison. Mental health problems are for people without willpower. Your sister manages to excel without all this drama. That night, my father emptied my bank account, which he was still a co-signer on, claiming it as repayment for the wasted tuition. My mother boxed up my belongings while I sat numb on my childhood bed. By morning, with $200 hidden in my sock from Tyler and a suitcase of clothes, I was standing on the front steps, being told not to return until I had something to show for myself. The next 3 months were a blur of homelessness, sleeping on acquaintances' couches, working odd jobs for cash and trying to stay afloat while battling severe depression without medication or therapy. Just when things seemed most hopeless, I met Grace Wilson, an older artist who ran a small gallery in Chicago. She had come to Boston for an exhibition and hired me to help with setup after seeing me sketching in a cafe where I had spent my last $5 on a coffee for the warmth and shelter. Grace saw something in me that my family never had. She saw potential that had nothing to do with status or conventional success. When she offered me a job and a place to stay in Chicago, it felt like the first genuine lifeline I had been thrown in years. Within a week, I had left Boston behind, hoping to never look back. I arrived in Chicago with exactly $212 to my name, a suitcase full of hastily packed clothes, and the business card of a woman who had promised me a chance. The bustling city was overwhelming after the manicured suburbs I had grown up in, but there was something freeing about the anonymity. No one here knew me as Richard and Diane Parker's disappointment. No one was comparing me to perfect Heather. I could simply be Allison, whoever that turned out to be. Grace lived above her small gallery in Wicker Park, in a loft apartment filled with books, half-finished canvases, and the lingering scent of oil paint. She cleared out her spare room, which had been used primarily for storage, and created a small but private space for me. The futon was lumpy, and the dresser was missing a drawer, but it was the first space that had ever truly felt like mine. The gallery job pays minimum wage, Grace explained on that first night, but you will learn more there than in any art school. And you can use the back room as a studio space after hours. The gallery job was mostly sweeping floors, packaging artwork for shipping, and answering phones, but true to Grace's word, I learned something new every day. I watched how she interacted with artists, how she spoke about their work to potential buyers, how she curated shows to tell a visual story. In the evenings, I experimented in the makeshift studio space, developing a technique that combined photography and painting in layers. After 2 months of living with Grace, I found a job at a nearby cafe owned by a warm, vivacious woman named Sofia Mendez. She hired me despite my lack of experience and worked around my gallery schedule. Between the 2 part-time jobs, I earned enough to rent a tiny studio apartment in a rundown building 6 blocks from the gallery. The apartment had water damage in one corner and unreliable heat, but the large windows provided perfect natural light for creating art. "You have something special," Grace told me, after looking through my newest pieces, 6 months after my arrival. "You just need to believe it yourself." With Grace's encouragement, I began submitting work to small local shows. My first acceptance came from a cafe group exhibition where I displayed 3 mixed media pieces exploring themes of identity and belonging. To my shock, a young couple purchased one of the pieces for $300 more money than I had seen at once since leaving Boston. At that exhibition, I met Daniel Foster, an architect with kind eyes and an easy laugh who spent 45 minutes discussing my use of layered transparency in the work. He asked for my number before leaving, and 3 days later, we had our first date at a hole-in-the-wall Thai restaurant where the food was incredible, and the bill was manageable on my tight budget. "I have never met anyone who sees the world quite like you do," he told me that night. And for the first time, I felt like my different perspective might be a strength rather than a failing. Over the next few years, my life expanded in ways I could never have imagined when I stood on my parents' doorstep with nowhere to go. I moved to a better apartment, one with reliable heating and no water damage. My work began selling consistently, first in small local galleries and then in more established spaces. Daniel and I grew closer, supporting each other's creative endeavors with genuine enthusiasm. When I was 26, Chicago Artist magazine featured my work in a spread highlighting emerging talent. I framed the article and hung it in my studio as a reminder of how far I had come. That same year, I was able to quit the cafe job and focus entirely on my art and gallery work with Grace, who had become more mentor than employer. Throughout those years of growth and healing, the only contact I had with my family was through occasional text messages from Tyler. He would send updates about his life at college, studying engineering but taking art classes as electives inspired by my path despite our parents' disapproval. He never mentioned our parents directly, and I never asked. It was easier to pretend that part of my life was sealed away. Until the day Tyler's message disrupted the careful boundaries I had constructed. "Heather is engaged. Big party at the house next month. You should come. They have changed, Ollie. I think they miss you." I stared at the message for hours, emotions churning. Had they changed? Did I even want reconciliation after how thoroughly they had erased me from their lives? Tyler was the only one who had stayed in touch, the only one who had ever apologized for not standing up for me more. "You do not have to go," Daniel said, when I showed him the message, his arm protective around my shoulders. "You owe them nothing." "I know," I replied, "but part of me needs to see them, to show them I survived, that I am whole despite them, not because of them." After 3 days of consideration, I texted Tyler back, "I will be there." His response came seconds later, "Really? That is amazing. I cannot wait to see you." And just like that, I committed to returning to the place that had broken me, to the people who had thrown me away, not for their sake, but for my own. To close a chapter that had been left painfully open for 9 long years. The Parker family mansion looked exactly the same as I remembered it. The colonial facade with its perfectly symmetrical windows, the circular driveway where luxury cars were now parked in neat rows, the manicured hedges trimmed with military precision. 9 years had passed, but standing at the edge of the property made it feel like yesterday that I had stood in this same spot, suitcase in hand, tears streaming down my face as the door closed firmly behind me. I had dressed carefully for this moment in a navy blue designer dress that I had purchased with the proceeds from my latest gallery show. My hair was styled in an elegant updo, my makeup subtle but flawless. The diamond studs in my ears had been a gift from Daniel on our 3rd anniversary. I looked successful, confident, put together, everything my family had never believed I could be. The walk to the front door felt like crossing a battlefield. Each step required conscious effort as memories threatened to overwhelm me. Tyler had offered to meet me outside, but I had declined. This was a journey I needed to make on my own terms. I rang the doorbell, the familiar chime echoing inside the house. For a moment, I considered turning around, running back to the safety of my hotel room, where Daniel waited supportive, as always. Before I could act on the impulse, the heavy wooden door swung open. My mother stood in the entryway, champagne flute in hand, wearing an expensive silk dress in her signature shade of burgundy. Her hair was blonder than I remembered her face, more lined despite obvious efforts to combat aging. For a brief moment, shock registered in her eyes before her expression hardened into something between disgust and alarm. "Why is this failure here?" she hissed, glancing nervously over her shoulder at the guests mingling in the foyer behind her. Before I could respond, my sister Heather appeared at my mother's side, her diamond engagement ring catching the light as she placed a territorial hand on the doorframe. She was thinner than I remembered, her smile tight and practiced as she assessed me from head to toe. "You are not on the guest list," she said with a smirk that did not reach her eyes. "This is invitation only." My father emerged from the crowd, Then his imposing figure slightly stooped now, silver threading through his once dark hair. His eyes passed over me as if I were invisible, focusing on a point somewhere beyond my left shoulder. I had rehearsed this moment countless times during the flight from Chicago, imagining all the cutting remarks I could make, all the ways I could showcase my success or highlight their cruelty. But standing there face to face with the people who had discarded me, I found those prepared speeches evaporating. Instead, I smiled calmly and spoke the simple truth. I am successful now. I came to celebrate with family. The word family hung in the air between us, challenging the fiction they had created that I no longer existed. My mother's grip tightened on her champagne glass, and my father's jaw clenched visibly. It was Heather who broke the tense silence. Well, you cannot just stand in the doorway. People will talk. It was not an invitation born of warmth, but of social preservation. The last thing the Parkers could tolerate was a scene that might generate gossip. With forced smiles, they stepped aside, allowing me to enter the home I had once believed would always be mine. The interior was a showcase of wealth filled with well-dressed guests holding crystal champagne flutes. I recognized some faces from my childhood neighbors and business associates who had attended countless dinner parties and summer barbecues. Many did a double take as I passed, clearly struggling to place me. Allison, Richard, and Diane's oldest. I heard one woman whisper to her husband, "I thought she was in Europe or something." They never mention her. As I moved through the crowd, I noticed what should have been obvious but still struck me like a physical blow. The family photographs lining the stairway wall had been altered. Family vacation pictures now showed only 4 people instead of 5. My parents, Heather and Tyler, smiled from silver frames with awkward spacing where I had once stood. In some, the images had been clearly cropped. In others, it appeared I had been digitally removed. Tyler spotted me from across the room and rushed over, enveloping me in a tight hug. At 24, he had grown into a handsome young man, taller than I remembered with our father's strong jawline but none of his coldness. "You came," he whispered. "I cannot believe you actually came." "I said I would," I replied, clinging to his familiar presence, like a life raft. "I am so sorry about them," he murmured, pulling back to glance at our parents who were now deliberately engaging with guests far across the room. "They have not changed as much as I hoped, but I have missed you so much." A tall man in an expensive suit approached, sliding his arm possessively around Heather's waist as she rejoined us. This must be James, the fiancé. He extended his hand with the confident ease of someone accustomed to being welcomed. "You must be a friend of Heather's from college. I do not believe we have met." An uncomfortable silence fell, as Tyler shifted from foot to foot, and Heather's face flushed with what might have been embarrassment or anger. "This is Allison," Tyler finally said. "Our sister." James blinked in confusion. "Sister, I thought there were only 2 children in the family." The casual confirmation that I had been completely erased from the family narrative sent a wave of nausea through me. Heather quickly pulled James away, whispering furiously in his ear as they retreated toward a group of her friends. Throughout the next hour, the pattern continued. My parents maintained their distance, speaking to every guest except me. Heather alternated between pretending I was invisible and shooting venomous glares in my direction. Only Tyler remained by my side, attempting to bridge a gap that seemed to widen with each passing minute. "You should not have come," my mother finally whispered when we crossed paths near the kitchen. Her smile remained fixed for the benefit of nearby guests, but her eyes were cold. "You are embarrassing the family." "By existing," I asked quietly. "Is that all it takes to embarrass the Parkers?" "You know what you did?" she hissed before turning away. But I did not know. I had never known what crime merited complete erasure beyond failing to be the daughter they had wanted. As I watched them perform their roles of perfect parents, perfect hosts, perfect people, I realized they had not changed at all. They had simply become more committed to the fiction they had created when they removed me from their lives. As the evening progressed, the engagement celebration moved into the formal dining room for a champagne toast. Crystal glasses clinked as the guests gathered around the long mahogany table that had been the setting for countless tense family dinners in my childhood. My father stood at the head of the table, commanding attention with the ease of someone accustomed to power. "Welcome, friends and family," he began, his voice carrying through the room. "Today we celebrate the engagement of our daughter Heather to James Holloway." He proceeded to introduce each family member present, his arm around my mother, then gesturing to Tyler, then to James's parents. I stood silently waiting for some acknowledgement, but it never came. In my father's narrative, I simply did not exist. To the happy couple, he concluded, raising his glass. "May your union bring together two of Boston's finest families." The room echoed with cheers as glasses were raised. I lifted mine as well, maintaining my composure despite the deliberate slight. From across the table, my mother was introducing a group of older women to my children, while looking only at Heather and Tyler. I was making my way toward a quiet corner when Heather intercepted me, a glass of red wine in her hand. Her smile was razor sharp as she stepped directly into my path. "Enjoying the party, gatecrasher?" she asked, her voice just low enough that nearby guests could not hear. "It is lovely," I replied evenly. "You and James seem well suited." Something flickered in her eyes, perhaps surprise at my lack of hostility. Before she could respond, her arm jerked forward, spilling red wine down the front of my navy dress. Gasps rose from nearby guests. "Oh my goodness," Heather exclaimed with theatrical concern. "How clumsy of me." As I stood there, wine seeping into the expensive fabric, Heather leaned closer, dropping all pretense of an accident. "She is nobody," she announced to the curious onlookers. "Just some failed artist who crashed my party." The shocked whispers and stares from the guests made my cheeks burn with humiliation. This was exactly what my family had always excelled at, making me feel small and insignificant. Public humiliation had always been their weapon of choice. Tyler rushed over with a napkin, attempting to blot the stain. "Heather, that is enough," he said firmly. "Stay out of this, Tyler," our father commanded, suddenly appearing beside Heather. "Return to your guests." His eyes slid past me as if I were made of glass, but the tension in his jaw betrayed his anger at the disruption. Tyler hesitated, conflict evident on his face, before our father's stern look sent him reluctantly back to a group of his friends. I was alone again, surrounded by strangers, witnessing my rejection by the people who should have loved me most. With as much dignity as I could muster, I excused myself and headed upstairs, seeking refuge from the judgmental stares. My feet automatically carried me to my old bedroom at the end of the hall, but when I opened the door, I found not the room of my youth, but a storage space filled with boxes and discarded furniture. Every trace of my existence had been packed away or disposed of. In the corner, I spotted several garbage bags and was drawn to them by some instinct. Kneeling down, I opened one to find my old journals, sketchbooks, and childhood art projects. Years of my creative development, my thoughts, my dreams, all consigned to trash bags in a forgotten corner. In another bag, I found photo albums with pictures that had clearly been removed from frames, every image featuring me systematically gathered and hidden away. I pulled out a family vacation photo from Cape Cod, where 14-year-old me stood grinning between my parents' arms wrapped around each other on the beach. The memory of that rare, perfect day hit me with unexpected force. My father had actually laughed that afternoon, had taught me to body surf in the Atlantic waves. My mother had applied sunscreen to my shoulders with gentle hands. For one day, we had been the family I had always wished for. Sitting on the floor, surrounded by the physical evidence of my erasure, I finally allowed the tears to come. Not quiet, dignified tears, but body-shaking sobs that released 9 years of hurt, rejection, and longing for the family that had never truly existed outside that rare, perfect day. I do not know how long I sat there before pulling myself together. The muffled sounds of the party continued below life. going on without me as it had for nearly a decade. Slowly, I repacked the bags, wiped my eyes, and stood up. I had two choices I could leave now: accepting once again the role they had assigned me of the failed daughter who disappears when things get difficult, or I could stay and finally stand my ground. As I was deliberating, the door creaked open and Tyler slipped in, concern etched on his face. "I have been looking everywhere for you," he said, taking in my tear-stained face and the bags of memories surrounding me. "I am so sorry, Ailey. This was a mistake. I should never have asked you to come." "No," I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "I needed to see this, to understand that there was nothing I could have done differently. This is who they are." Tyler sank down beside me on the floor, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "They are worse than you know," he confessed. "Dad's company is nearly bankrupt. He made some bad investments, tried to cover them up, and now everything is hanging by a thread. The only reason he is so excited about Heather and James is because the Holloways have money." "And Mom?" I asked. "Drinking more than ever. They barely speak except when others are around. And Heather," he sighed heavily. "She knows James is mostly interested in the Parker name and connections. She does not even love him, but she is terrified of disappointing them the way." He trailed off, looking at me apologetically. "The way I did," I finished for him. "It is okay. You can say it." "The way they think you did," he corrected. "I have always admired you, Allie. You were the only one brave enough to live on your own terms." His words warmed something inside me that had been cold for too long. With new resolve, I stood and smoothed down my wine-stained dress. "I did not come back for revenge," I told him. "But I am not leaving until they acknowledge my existence, one way or another." When I returned downstairs, the party had moved to the great room where dessert and coffee were being served. I had tried to clean the wine stain as best I could, but the mark remained visible against the navy fabric, a crimson badge of the evening's hostilities. As I entered the room, several guests glanced my way before quickly averting their eyes, the earlier scene clearly still fresh in their minds. I spotted my parents holding court near the fireplace, champagne glasses in hand, as they chatted with an older couple I recognized as longtime family friends, the Williamsons. With steady steps, I approached the group, positioning myself directly in their line of sight. My mother faltered mid-sentence as she noticed me, her practiced smile slipping for just a moment. "Barbara, Harold, how wonderful to see you both again," I said warmly to the Williamsons, who had always been kind to me as a child. "It has been years." "Allison Parker," Barbara exclaimed, genuine pleasure lighting her face. "My goodness, look at you all grown up and beautiful. Where have you been hiding yourself?" "Chicago, actually," I replied. "I have a studio there. I am an artist." Harold beamed. "Always knew you would do something creative. You were always drawing something when you were little, remember?" He turned to my father. "Richard, you must be so proud of both your daughters." My father's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Heather has always been exceptionally focused," he replied smoothly, sidestepping any mention of me. "Just like her fiancé. They will go far together." Before the awkward moment could extend, an elegant silver-haired woman approached our group, her eyes fixed on me with curious intensity. "Excuse me," she said, "but did I hear correctly that you are Allison Parker, the artist?" "Yes," I confirmed, extending my hand. "And you are?" "Margaret Whitman," she replied, her grip firm and confident. "I acquired one of your mixed media pieces last year from the Carlson Gallery in New York. Fragments of Identity, I believe it was called. Absolutely stunning work." A shocked silence fell over our small group. My parents exchanged confused glances, clearly struggling to process this information. "You are the Allison Parker," Margaret continued, oblivious to the tension. "Your work sells for thousands now, does not it?" "I told my husband we should have bought more pieces when you were still emerging. The value has already doubled." My mother's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Thousands, she echoed faintly. Margaret nodded enthusiastically. Oh yes. My curator says she is following your career closely. You are making quite a name for yourself in contemporary art circles. The revelation of my success hung in the air like a physical presence. I could almost see the mental calculations happening behind my parents' eyes, their worldview rapidly adjusting to accommodate this unexpected information. We always supported Allison's artistic side, my mother suddenly declared, her arm slipping through mine as if we had always been close. I still have her early works, such talent from a young age. I gently disentangled myself from her grasp. The ones in the garbage bags upstairs, I asked quietly. Barbara and Harold exchanged uncomfortable glances, while Margaret raised an eyebrow, sensing the undercurrents but too polite to comment. My father, ever the businessman, recovered quickly. Allison and I should catch up about her career, he announced, suddenly all interest. Perhaps there are investment opportunities we should discuss. 9 years too late for that, I replied evenly. The conversation might have ended there if Heather had not chosen that moment to join us, clearly irritated by the attention I was receiving. She slid between me and Margaret, effectively cutting me off from the conversation. James is looking for you, Daddy, she said pointedly. Something about the merger discussions. Of course, my father nodded, visibly relieved at the excuse to exit the increasingly uncomfortable situation. As he stepped away, Heather turned to me, her smile not reaching her eyes. Still seeking attention at someone else's expense, I see. Heather, my mother cautioned, glancing nervously at the Williamsons and Margaret, who were watching the exchange with interest. No, Mother, I am tired of pretending, Heather snapped. This is my engagement party, and she shows up uninvited, making it all about her. Just like always. The nearby conversations quieted as guests tuned in to the brewing confrontation. Tyler appeared at my side, a supportive presence as the situation escalated. Perhaps we should continue this in private, my mother suggested, through clenched teeth attempting to maintain appearances. Wonderful idea, I agreed, turning toward the kitchen. My family followed, reluctantly aware that refusing would only create more of a scene. The kitchen door swung shut behind us, muffling the party sounds and creating an island of tense silence. The four of us stood in a loose circle, years of unspoken grievances hanging heavy in the air. My father joined us moments later, closing the door firmly behind him. What exactly do you want? He demanded, his voice low and controlled. Money. Is that why you have shown up after all this time? Now that you have had some minor success, you think you can leverage it? I wanted nothing from you 9 years ago when you threw me out, and I want nothing now. I replied steadily. I came because Tyler asked me to. Because, despite everything, he still believes in the idea of family. We gave you every opportunity, my father countered. The best schools, every advantage, and you threw it all away on your childish rebellion. I was clinically depressed, I said. I needed help, not judgment. I needed parents, not critics. Everyone gets sad sometimes, my mother interjected dismissively. Normal people push through it without all the drama. Is that what you tell yourself when you finish a bottle of wine before noon? I asked quietly. Her face paled. How dare you? Why did you erase me? I asked, the question I had carried for 9 years, finally spoken aloud. Not just from your lives, but from every photograph, every family story. Why go to such lengths to pretend I never existed? Failures do not belong in this family, my father stated flatly. We gave you a choice, and you chose to leave. No, you gave me an ultimatum when I was at my lowest point. There is a difference. You were weak, Heather cut in. You always took the easy way out. Some of us had to stay and live up to expectations. And how is that working for you? I asked. Are you happy, Heather? Does James know you do not love him? That you are just following the Parker family script? You know nothing about my life, she hissed. I know what it is like to be shaped by their expectations, I replied. To measure your worth by their approval. The difference is, I found a way out. A way out. My mother laughed bitterly. Look at you coming back here, seeking our validation even now. No, I shook my head. I came back to face the past so I could finally leave it behind completely. I came back to understand that it was never about me at all. In that moment, looking at the people who had once been my entire world, I felt a strange sense of clarity. They were just people flawed and fearful, clinging to their narrow definition of success and worth. The power they had held over me existed only in my mind. I used to dream about this moment, I admitted, about showing you how wrong you were about me, making you regret throwing me away. But standing here now, I just feel sad for all of us, for the family we could have been. For the first time that night, my words seemed to penetrate their defenses. My mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and my father looked suddenly older, the weight of his choices visible in the slump of his shoulders. Only Heather maintained her shield of anger, though even she seemed less certain than before. You should go, my father finally said, his voice lacking its earlier authority. I will, I agreed. But first there is something you all need to know. The kitchen had become our battleground the rest of the party, a distant hum beyond the closed door. My family stood arrayed before me, their faces, a mixture of hostility, confusion, and in Tyler's case, hope. For 9 years I had imagined this confrontation, but now that it was happening, I felt oddly calm, anchored by the person I had become without them. I brought something to show you, I said, reaching into my purse and pulling out a sleek portfolio case. This is who I am now. I placed the portfolio on the kitchen island and opened it to reveal glossy photographs of my artwork hanging in prestigious galleries, magazine features, about my unique technique, and finally a bank statement showing a balance that would have impressed even my finance-obsessed father. I am not here to beg for your approval or forgiveness, I explained as they leaned forward to examine the evidence of my success. I am here to close a chapter that has been left open for too long. My mother picked up an art magazine with my portrait featured prominently. This is really you. Your work sells for this much. She tapped a figure in one of the articles. Yes, and next month I am closing on a building in downtown Chicago. I am opening my own gallery. My father's eyes widened slightly at this information. His respect for property ownership and entrepreneurship momentarily overriding his dismissal of art as a legitimate career. I did not come here to flaunt my success, I continued. I came to tell you that despite being abandoned and erased, I found my way. Not because of your lessons about status and appearance, but in spite of them. I turned to face each of them directly. I found a real family, people who supported me when I had nothing to offer but my broken self. I told them about Grace, the gallery owner who had become the mother figure I had always needed, who had believed in my talent when I could not believe in myself. I described how she had taught me not just about art, but about unconditional love and genuine mentorship. And there is Sophia, who gave me my first steady job when no one else would take a chance on me, who fed me when I could not afford groceries and checked on me when I was sick. I spoke of my community of fellow artists in Chicago who had become like siblings, challenging and supporting me in equal measure. Of friends who had shown up during difficult times without keeping score or demanding perfection. And Daniel, I said softly, the man who loves me completely, who has never once asked me to be anything other than exactly who I am. He is waiting for me at the hotel right now, probably worried sick about how this evening is going. Tyler stepped forward, then positioning himself beside me, rather than with the rest of the family. I want what Allison has, he announced, his voice stronger than I had ever heard it. Not the money or the success, but the freedom. The authentic life. My father's face darkened. Do not be ridiculous, Tyler. You have responsibilities here. The family business needs you now more than ever. The family business is failing because of your poor decisions, Tyler replied evenly. and I am tired of living in fear of disappointing you. Allison showed me there is another way. If you do this, you will regret it, my father threatened. Without the Parker name and connections, you are nothing. That is where you are wrong, Dad, I interjected. Tyler is brilliant and kind and hardworking. Those qualities matter more in the real world than the Parker name ever will. My mother, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up, her voice brittle. And what about us? You both just walk away, leaving Heather to carry everything alone. Heather made her choice, I reminded her. Just as I made mine and Tyler is making his. Heather, who had been watching this exchange with growing agitation, finally exploded. This is not fair. I did everything right. I followed all the rules. I am the one marrying into money to save this family. And what do I get? A fiancé who is more interested in business connections than in me, and parents who see me as nothing but an asset. Her raw honesty seemed to surprise even her. James, who had apparently been searching for his missing fiancé, chose that moment to push open the kitchen door. His expression shifted from concern to confusion as he took in the tense family tableau. Everything okay in here? He asked uncertainly. No, Heather responded, turning to face him. Nothing is okay. This whole engagement is a business arrangement. You know it, I know it, and our parents know it. James paled visibly. Heather, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Why? So, we can keep pretending. I am tired of pretending, she said, echoing my earlier sentiment in a way that highlighted our unexpected common ground. The kitchen fell silent as James backed out, clearly unsure how to respond to this public unraveling of their engagement narrative. My mother pressed her fingers to her temples, while my father looked as if he might explode from contained fury. See what you have done? He hissed at me. You come back and immediately start destroying everything we have built. I did not destroy anything, I replied calmly. I just held up a mirror. In that moment, I realized that whatever closure I had sought was not going to come from their acknowledgement or apology. It could only come from within myself, from finally accepting that they might never change and that their approval was no longer necessary for my happiness. I should go, I said, gathering my portfolio. But before I do, I want you to know that I forgive you. Their surprised expressions told me this was the last thing they had expected. Not for your sake, but for mine, I clarified. Carrying this hurt has taken too much of my energy for too long, and despite everything you gave me life, and for that I am grateful. I turned to Tyler. You are always welcome in Chicago. There is a whole world waiting for you beyond these walls. Before anyone could respond, I walked out of the kitchen and through the great room toward the front door. The party guests parted before me, conversation quieting as I passed. At the entryway, I paused and turned back to address the now silent room. For those of you who have wondered where I have been all these years, the answer is simple. I have been becoming myself. And for anyone who has ever been made to feel invisible or unworthy by the people who should love you most, I want you to know something. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. I am funding a new scholarship program for young artists who have been rejected by their families. It will provide not just financial support, but mentorship and community. It is called the Grace Wilson Foundation, after the woman who taught me that family is about who loves you, not who shares your DNA. As murmurs spread through the crowd, I made my exit, stepping out into the cool night air with Tyler beside me. I had come seeking closure and found something more valuable, the certainty that my worth was not determined by the Parker family's narrow vision of success. I had built something meaningful from the ashes of rejection, and in doing so, had finally set myself free. The drive back to the hotel was quiet, both Tyler and I processing the evening's events. He had decided to come with me, at least for the night, needing space to think about his next steps. When we pulled up to the hotel entrance, Daniel was waiting in the lobby, his concerned expression melting into relief as he saw us. You are okay, he breathed, pulling me into a tight embrace. I was worried. I am more than okay, I assured him, feeling the truth of it in my bones. I would like you to meet my brother Tyler. The two most important men in my life shook hands, Daniel's warm welcome putting Tyler at ease immediately. Over late-night room service in our hotel suite, I recounted the evening's dramatic confrontation, finding that the retelling lacked the emotional charge of the actual experience. Already the events were transforming from open wounds to healing scars. So, what happens now? Daniel asked, his hands steady and reassuring on mine. Now we go home, I replied simply. Back to our life in Chicago. Tyler looked up from his plate. And me? What happens to me? That depends on what you want, I told him. You are welcome to stay with us while you figure things out. Or you can go back and try to work things out with Mom and Dad. It has to be your decision. I think I need to see what life looks like outside the Parker bubble, he said slowly. I have never even had the chance to discover who I am without their expectations. The next morning, Tyler returned to the house to pack some belongings while Daniel and I checked out of the hotel. By noon, the three of us were on a flight back to Chicago, leaving Boston and its painful memories behind. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Tyler enrolled in art classes at the local community college while assisting at Grace's gallery to earn his keep. Daniel and I resumed our normal routines, though everything felt somehow lighter, as if I had set down a heavy burden I had not fully acknowledged carrying. When the closing date for my new gallery building arrived, Grace insisted on accompanying me to the signing. This is a big moment, she said firmly. You need proper witnesses. The renovations began immediately, transforming the old warehouse space into a light-filled gallery with studio spaces that would be rented to emerging artists at affordable rates. Each decision I made was informed by my own experience of struggling to find footing in the art world without support. Exactly 1 month after the confrontation at my parents' house, we held the grand opening of Parker Gallery. The space was filled with friends, fellow artists, collectors, and arts reporters, covering the launch of what Chicago Arts Weekly had called the most anticipated new gallery of the year. Grace, elegant in a silver dress that matched her hair, beamed with pride as she introduced me to influential collectors. Sophia had closed her cafe early to attend, bringing a team of servers and trays of her famous appetizers as her gift. Daniel moved through the crowd, charming everyone he spoke to, while sending me reassuring glances whenever our eyes met across the room. Tyler, who had found his own apartment the week before, was deep in conversation with a group of art students, looking more confident and relaxed than I had ever seen him. Watching him laugh freely, I felt a surge of protective love for the brother who had found his way back to me. I was speaking with a reporter when I noticed a hush fall over one section of the gallery. Turning, I saw my mother standing uncertainly in the entrance alone, and looking smaller somehow without my father's dominating presence beside her. She wore a simple black dress, more understated than her usual style, and clutched her purse with both hands like a shield. Excusing myself from the interview, I crossed the room to greet her. "Mother," I said, surprised by her appearance, but determined to remain composed. "I did not expect to see you here." "I was not sure I would be welcome," she admitted, her eyes taking in the crowded gallery, the elegant space, the success that was evident in every detail. "You are," I said simply, though part of me remained wary of her intentions. "Your father and Heather refused to come," she stated, a faint tremor in her voice. "They are still angry. About Tyler leaving, about the engagement falling apart, about everything." "And you?" I asked. "Are you angry too?" She shook her head slowly, tears gathering in her eyes. "I am just sad. Sad about all the years we lost. Sad that I was too weak to stand up for you when you needed me." It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever heard from her. Not quite taking responsibility, but acknowledging at least that something valuable had been lost. "What changed?" I asked, genuinely curious about her presence here so far from her comfort zone. "After you left that night, nothing felt the same," she explained haltingly. It was as if you had turned on a light in a dark room, and suddenly I could see clearly how empty everything was. How empty I was. She glanced around at the vibrant gallery, the creative energy palpable in the space. "This is real," she said softly. "What you have built here is real in a way our life in Boston never was." I did not know what to say to this unexpected vulnerability from a woman who had always hidden behind a perfect facade. Before I could formulate a response, Tyler spotted us and made his way over. His initial shock at seeing our mother gave way to cautious curiosity. "Mom," he greeted her with a slight nod. "You came all this way." "I did," she agreed, reaching toward him, but stopping short of actual contact. "I miss you, Tyler." The three of us stood in an uncertain triangle, decades of complicated history flowing between us. It was Grace who broke the tension, approaching with her usual gracious confidence. "You must be Diane Parker," she said, extending her hand. "I am Grace Wilson. Your daughter is one of the most remarkable people I have ever had the privilege to know." My mother blinked rapidly, clearly processing the implication that this elegant woman had filled the maternal role she had abandoned. "Thank you for being there for her," she said, finally, her voice barely audible over the gallery noise. "It was my honor," Grace replied with genuine warmth. "Would you like a tour of the gallery? Allison's newest series is displayed in the main room. Her use of light is extraordinary." As Grace gently guided my mother through the exhibition, I felt Daniel's arm slip around my waist. "You okay?" he murmured against my hair. "Yes," I said, realizing it was true. "I am." By the end of the evening, no grand reconciliation had occurred. There were no tearful embraces or dramatic declarations of familial love. Instead, there was something quieter but perhaps more honest, the tentative beginning of a new kind of relationship with my mother, one based on who we actually were rather than who we had pretended to be. My father remained in Boston, entrenched in his pride and disappointment. Heather had apparently moved to New York after the dissolution of her engagement, unwilling to face the social fallout in their close-knit community. Whether they would ever be part of my life again remained an open question, but for the first time I was at peace with that uncertainty. In the months that followed, I came to understand that being abandoned and erased by my family had ultimately led me to discover who I truly was, outside the confining box of their expectations. The journey had been painful, the healing slow and nonlinear, but standing on the other side, I could see how each difficulty had shaped me into someone stronger and more compassionate than I might otherwise have been. My mother began therapy, taking small steps toward becoming a person capable of genuine connection. Tyler flourished in his new freedom, discovering a talent for sculpture that surprised and delighted him. Daniel and I continued building our life together, richer for having weathered storms and celebrated triumphs as a team. And I continued creating art that spoke to themes of identity, belonging, and resilience. Each piece a testament to the truth that sometimes being erased from one story is the beginning of writing your own. Have you ever had to create your own definition of family? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey of healing and rediscovery resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to join our community of survivors and thrivers. Share this with someone who might need to hear that rejection is not the end of their story, but perhaps just the beginning of a more authentic one. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and remember, you are never truly invisible when you stand in your own light.